Chapter 56. Rachel slapped her face until it began to sting, and still she kept nodding off. Once she snapped fully awake, she was in Pittsfield now and had the turnpike all to herself, and it seemed to her for a split second that dozens of silvery, merciless eyes were looking at her, twinkling like cold, hungry fire. Then they resolved themselves into the small reflectors on the guardrail posts. The Chevy had drifted far over into the breakdown lane. She wrenched the wheel to the left again, the tires wailing, and she believed she heard a faint tick that might have had been her right front bumper just kissing off one of those guardrail posts. Her heart leapt in her chest and began to bang so hard between her ribs that she saw small specks before her eyes, growing and shrinking in time with its beat. And yet a moment later, in spite of her close shave, her scare, and Robert Gordon shouting red hot on the radio, she was dozing off again. A crazy paranoid thought came to her. Paranoid, all right, she muttered under the rock and roll. She tried to laugh, but she couldn't. Not quite, because the thought remained, and in the eye of the night, it gained a spooky kind of credibility. She began to feel like a cartoon figure who has run into a rubber band of a gigantic slingshot. Poor guy finds forward motion harder and harder, until at last the potential energy of the rubber band equalizes the actual energy of the runner. Inertia becomes what? Elementary physics. Something trying to hold her back. Stay out of this, you. And a body at rest tends to remain at rest. Gage's body, for instance, once set in motion. This time, the scream of tires was louder, the shave a lot closer. For a moment, there was the squealing, grailing sound of the Chevy running along the guardrail cables, scraping paint down to the twinkling metal. And for a moment, the wheel didn't answer. And then Rachel was standing on the brake, sobbing. She had been asleep this time, not just dozing off, but asleep and dreaming at 60 miles an hour. And if there had been no guardrail, or if there had been an overpass stanchion. She pulled over and put the car in park and wept into her hands, bewildered and afraid. Something is trying to keep me away from him. When she felt she had control of herself, she began to drive again. The little car's steering did not seem impaired, but she supposed the Avies company would have some serious questions for her when she returned the car to BIA tomorrow. Never mind. One thing at a time. Got to get some coffee into me. That's the first thing. When the Pittsfield exit came up, Rachel took it. About a mile down the road, she came to bright arc sodium lights and the steady mutter growl of diesel engines. She pulled in, had the Chevy filled up. Somebody put a pretty good ding along that side of her. The gas Jockey said in an almost admiring voice, and then went into the diner, which smelled of deep fat grease, vulcanized eggs, and blessedly of strong coffee. Rachel had 3 cups, one after another, like medicine, black sweetened with a lot of sugar. A few truckers sat at the counter or in the booths, kidding the waitresses, who somehow all managed to look like tired nurses filled with bad news under those fluorescent lights burning in the night's little hours. She paid her check and went back out to where she had parked the Chevy. It wouldn't start. The key, when turned, would cause the solenoid to utter a dry click, but that was all. Rachel began to beat her fists slowly and forcefully against the steering wheel. Something was trying to stop her. There was no reason for this car, brand new and with less than 5,000 miles on its odometer, to have died like this, but it had. Somehow it had, and here she was, stranded in Pittsfield, still almost 50 miles from home. She listened to the steady drone of the big trucks, and it came to her with a sudden, vicious certainty that the truck which had killed her son was here among them, not muttering, but chuckling.